Joining us now for the third of 5 consecutive appearances on the agenda all week long, Jeremy Rifkin. From the Foundation on Economic Trends, he's the author most recently of The Empathic Civilization, and he comes to us from the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania. We're talking the promise and problems of progress all week long here on the agenda, and we left off last night with you segueing us very nicely into the third industrial revolution. That refers to what?
Well, we're at a turning point right now in human history. We had 2 events in the last 18 months which signaled the endgame for the second industrial revolution based on fossil fuels. You remember in July 2008 when oil hit $147 a barrel, prices went through the roof because everything's based on fossil fuels, everything. And so when the prices went through the roof, purchasing power plummeted all over the world. We had food riots in 40 countries. The whole economic engine of the industrial age turned off at $147 a barrel because it's all based on fossil fuels. And that was the earthquake. The collapse of the financial market 60 days later was the aftershock because we couldn't maintain the fiction of all this debt-ridden globalization when the real economy went south based on fossil fuels. And so that's the outer limit of globalization. We're in the end game now of an industrial age based on fossil fuels. The first,
Endgame meaning?
Meaning it's not coming back. And that's because of something called peak oil per capita. It happened in 1979. If you distributed all the oil that existed back then, everyone that was alive, that's the most each person could have. We found more oil since then, but population rose quicker. So when China and India made a bid at a 10% growth rate to bring 1/3 of the human race into the Industrial Revolution, the demand pressure against the oil reserves was too great, prices went up, the engine turned off at $150 a barrel. That's an end game. Now we're trying to replenish inventory, so we're growing the economy again. But what's happening? Oil's going over 80 a barrel. So what I say to my colleagues is, every time we try to regrow the economy, oil prices are going to go up and all the other prices for fossil fuels, and it's going to keep turning off at $150 a barrel, collapsing back down. We're in the end game. We can't get through that wall. It's peak globalization. So what we see is the fossil fuel energies, coal, oil, gas, and uranium, they're sunset energies. They're exhausted. And all the technologies based on them, like the internal combustion engine, are old. No multiplier effect, as we say in business. And the whole infrastructure based on them is on life support. So that's where we are. Then you fast forward to Copenhagen in December 2009. Our world leaders come together to deal with the entropy bill for the industrial age, all the spent CO2. After 2 centuries of industrial growth, not only is the infrastructure on life support, but now we got to pay the bill, all the CO2 we put in the atmosphere.
So the entropy bill refers to?
The carbon dioxide. In other words, all that spent energy, that's what entropy is.
The wreckage we've left behind.
The wreckage, all that carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, now we have to pay for it because we may be facing climatic changes on the temperature of the Earth, which could affect our own survival and even our potential ability to maintain ourselves on this planet. And even there at Copenhagen, it all broke down, totally collapsed, no deal. So we have to step back now and ask, where do we go from here? The second industrial revolution is never going to come back. We have to keep it on life support, but it's almost dead. We are on the cusp of a new convergence of communication and energy. As you know, in the last few days, I've been saying that the great changes in history, the changes in consciousness occur when we change our energy regimes, then create new communication revolutions to manage them, and it changes consciousness. We're on the cusp of a third industrial revolution. I don't know if we'll get there in time, but it could create what we call biosphere consciousness and help us reposition ourselves on this Earth.
So the energy change for you is hydrogen, right? That's where you want to see.
Well, it's part of it. It's part of it. First, the communication part, and that is the internet revolution. This is second generation communication. First generation was top down, cinema, radio, TV, telephones, etc. The new internet communication is what we call distributed. That's the key. Now, several billion people can send their own video, audio, and text to each other, distributed at the speed of light.
That's connected.
Think Wikipedia, file sharing of music, YouTube, etc. This distributed ITC revolution, communication technology revolution, is now converging with a new energy regime, distributed energy. And when distributed internet technology manages distributed energies, we have a third industrial revolution, and the shift from ideological and psychological consciousness to biosphere consciousness. Distributed energies, of course, are energies that are found in the backyard. They're distributed. They're everywhere. Elite energies, coal, oil, gas, uranium, chances are you go home today, they're not in your backyard, all right? Maybe if you live in Alberta, you have some tar sand, but they're not in your backyard. And they're sunsetting. But distributed energies, the sun shines every day, the wind blows, we have geothermal heat under the ground, agricultural and forestry waste for energy in rural areas, water gives you hydroelectricity, the tidal waves in the oceans are coming in and out, we have garbage. So that energy is distributed all over the world in some proportion. The European Union is now committed to this, a third industrial revolution, and I was privileged to develop the economic game plan for the EU, which we're now operationalizing, just beginning to come to Canada.
How many governments have you consulted for in the EU?
Well, I've consulted, I've advised 5 of the last 7 presidents of the EU. I advised the EU itself and the Parliament, and a number of heads of state, Chancellor Merkel in Germany, Zapatero in Spain, Papandreou in Greece, etc. So I've been there a long time. So what's happened in the EU is we've committed to a 4-pillar infrastructure for a third industrial revolution. Pillar 1, we've committed to 20% renewable energies. That's a third of the electricity in Europe by 2020. That's a mandate, not a benchmark. Pillar 2, we asked the question, how do we actually collect all this energy? Because it's everywhere. So what we envision in Europe is converting millions and millions and millions of existing buildings and transforming them with a huge construction boom into power plants. So you collect your own sun on the roof, wind on the walls, heat under the ground. Your building's not only a dwelling, it becomes your power plant, and we jumpstart an economic revolution.
And do you sell it to somebody else if you got more of it?
Absolutely. Well, that's good. You're going to Pillar 3.
Okay.
Pillar 3, we have to store those energies, so we've created hydrogen as a way to store renewable energies, the way digital stores media. Then Pillar 4 is where the communication and energy revolution come together. We take the internet technology, same technology, and we're taking the power grid and transmission electricity lines of Europe and turning them into an intergrid. It acts exactly like the internet. So when millions and millions of buildings are producing just a little bit of their own energy, renewable energy, store it with hydrogen, like you store digital and media. If they don't need some of it, they share it peer-to-peer across the intergrid, just like we actually create our own information now and share it on the internet.
And you make money.
You make money. And it gives you sustainable energy. Everybody, no one is beholden to geopolitical powers, some other part of the world. You create your energy locally, but you have to share it peer-to-peer in a collaborative fashion across the continent. This is what we call distributed capitalism.
Is this inevitable?
It's not inevitable, but we're moving it out in Europe. I chair a group called the Third Industrial Revolution Global CEO Business Roundtable. We have 100 companies, major renewable energy companies, construction, real estate, IT, logistics, transport.
European, all of them?
European and American. And we're laying out master plans now. We're just finishing Rome. The entire 40-year plan to make this a third industrial revolution post-carbon city right now. We're doing whole countries. We just finished Monaco for Prince Albert. We're about to do Spain, which is a huge, the 9th largest power. So in Europe, it's happening, not yet here. But what's interesting about it is it changes consciousness and changes our notion of progress. Remember I said when you go to the first industrial revolution, you have ideological consciousness. Progress is productivity, wealth. Second industrial revolution, you go to psychological consciousness, and we define progress as self-development, personal development. Third industrial revolutions, we go to biosphere consciousness. When everyone's responsible for stewarding their part of the biosphere where they live and managing their own energy and photosynthesis right where they live, but then we have to share our energy with each other across entire continents, we become aware in our mind that we are as connected in the ecosystems that make up the biosphere as we're connected in the social spaces that make up the blogosphere.
Okay, that's a compelling argument, but you say it's happening over the pond, but not here. Why not here?
Well, it's starting here in some regions. Ontario is a real comer here for North America. I'm pretty impressed. They're moving along. Many of your regions, British Columbia, Manitoba, there's a few regions, which I won't name, which are still in the second industrial revolution, not quite where we need to go.
Name names, go ahead.
Well, I think if you go out to Alberta and Calgary area, tar sands is 20th century thinking. It increases the entropy bill, it's concentrated energy, it doesn't get us to a third industrial revolution, it won't create millions and millions of jobs. But try to imagine a third industrial revolution. Renewable energies, millions of jobs to create those technologies. Germany's created hundreds of thousands of jobs already in just the last 5 years. Convert every building in North America to a power plant, that's millions of jobs. Set up hydrogen storage, that's millions of jobs. Configure the entire power grid, the transport, the logistics, Your auto industry, millions of jobs. You can't get that with tar sands and nuclear power and coal-fired power plants.
I don't know if this is too parochial a question, but it costs about 4 cents a kilowatt hour to make power at a coal-fired generating station in this province right now. And the government of Ontario that you just referenced is paying solar producers, I think 71 cents a kilowatt hour on a 20-year deal to make sure that they produce it. I'm told that's the best rate you're going to get anywhere in the world, and that we're going to be huge players as a result of that. Is that your understanding?
Ontario is doing very, very well. But what I would say is the next step here is it's not enough just to have these individual components. You have to create a comprehensive plan where all 4 pillars are put down simultaneously, or you end up in pilot project after pilot project, and the earth heats up and we have climate change. So in Europe, we create master plans for whole cities and regions and countries. So the renewable energies come in, the buildings are converted to power plants, we put in the hydrogen storage, we set up the power grids, we put in plug-in electric, and they all go down at the same time as an infrastructure. I think the regions of Canada could absolutely lead in this hemisphere, and I think down south in the States, we could pick up from your lead, but I think you need to move to that next step and create what we call biosphere consciousness. Biosphere consciousness redefines progress. We don't think of progress as simply individual material wealth, first industrial revolution, or more efficiency, or more autonomy. We don't think simply individual self-development, second industrial revolution, psychological consciousness. In biosphere consciousness, we think progress is being a good steward on this planet.
Well, let me ask you the question then, because this is the last, I don't want to give it away, but this is the last question you leave your readers with in your book, which is, can we reach biosphere consciousness and global empathy in time to avert planetary collapse? In our last few minutes, what's the answer to that question? What do you think?
It depends on the human race. There is no fait accompli that we will be here in the future. Species come and go. Our scientists tell us that we could see 70% of our existing species moving to extinction. That's a wipeout within this century, the next 3 generations. We're sleepwalking. We're in denial. But the human race is a very ingenious species. We have a very big neocortex. We are the most social of species. We have to rethink what human nature is. Why are we here? What's the mission of the human race? What does it mean to live in a small biosphere containing life in the universe? And then we have to redefine progress as how we fit in and how we replenish this earth and how we become good partners to our fellow creatures in this little oasis in the universe. That is a big mission. I wrote The Empathic Civilization, by the way, because I said it's not enough just to have a good economic game plan. We have it in the EU, Third Industrial Revolution. But unless we change the mind, so we began to think in terms of being a human family and our fellow creatures as our evolutionary family living in one biosphere, unless we actually change the wiring of the brain in terms of how we define progress, we won't be able to lay down a Third Industrial Revolution in time to save our species and to save our planet.
You see enough of that happening right now?
We're moving it quickly in Europe. I think Canada could move quickly. I think Ontario has been a potential flagship. But now you have to create a much more comprehensive game plan to lay down the Third Industrial Revolution, and we have to change our thinking about education, parenting, governance, change the mind, so we have biosphere consciousness and redefine progress as the human race, as a family, being able to live on this planet together.
How do we do that? That's big picture thinking. How do we do that when most people, most people are trying to get up in the morning, go to work, get their kids off to school, get home, and then do it all again the next day?
It's changing very quickly and we don't notice it. It's changing the entire school system around the world. If you go to any school system in Canada, check this out, grade school, middle school, high school, the students are learning biosphere consciousness, and it's a revolution. In fact, it's good they didn't know it, because they would have probably kept it out of the schools, because it's going to change everything. The students are learning from the teachers that everything they do, every single activity they engage in each day, the food they eat, the clothes they wear, the electricity they use, the family automobile, leaves an ecological footprint, a carbon footprint that affects the well-being of some other family somewhere else in the world or some other creature. So we're beginning to learn biosphere consciousness, that we are not islands, we're not autonomous beings, we're not individual agents, we have our self-identity, but we are so connected that everything we do affects each other. That's biosphere consciousness. That helps us redefine progress, so it isn't just the individual opportunity to succeed, the old American dream, but it's a quality of life for the human race and our fellow creatures.
And that is where we pick up the discussion tomorrow. Redefining progress. Jeremy Rifkin, thanks so much. It's funny you say that because my 7-year-old